The flickering candlelight cast long, dancing shadows across the cluttered room, illuminating dust motes swirling in the stagnant air. 5 years. 5 years since the light in Aarav's world had been extinguished. 5 years since Elara vanished without a trace, leaving behind only a chilling silence and a heart shattered into a million irreparable pieces. He hadn't touched her favorite book of poetry since, its spine now cracked and faded, mirroring the state of his own soul. Aarav, once a vibrant artist with dreams painted across his canvases, had become a recluse in their shared cottage, nestled deep within the whispering woods on the outskirts of Shimla. The vibrant hues of his past had been replaced by the monochrome of grief, the joyous melodies by the haunting echoes of her laughter. He existed in a perpetual twilight, the days blurring into nights, each marked only by the gnawing absence of Elara. The villagers whispered stories, their voices hushed with a mixture of pity and fear. Some spoke of a jilted suitor, others of a wandering spirit claimed by the ancient forest. The police investigation had gone cold months ago, another unsolved mystery swallowed by the misty hills. But Aarav knew, deep in his bones, that Elara hadn't simply left. She wouldn't have. Their love was a tapestry woven too tightly, their souls too entwined for such a sudden, inexplicable severance. He clung to the fragments of their past, like a drowning man to driftwood. Elara's silver locket, always cool against his palm, the scent of lavender that still faintly clung to her shawl, the half-finished painting on the easel, a vibrant depiction of the valley bathed in the golden light of dawn, forever incomplete. Tonight, however, an unsettling energy pulsed through the cottage, a disquiet that went beyond the usual ache of his loss. The wind howled outside, rattling the window panes like skeletal fingers tapping for entry. The ancient trees surrounding the cottage groaned and swayed, their branches clawing at the stormy sky. Inside, the shadows seemed to deepen, to take on malevolent shapes. Aarav sat hunched by the dying fire, a half-empty mug of tea growing cold beside him. He tried to lose himself in the worn pages of Elara's poetry book, but the familiar verses offered no solace tonight. A prickling sensation crawled up his spine, the feeling of being watched, intensely and malevolently. He dismissed it as his grief playing tricks, the lonely silence amplifying his anxieties. Then he heard it, a faint scratching sound, coming from the attic above, the attic which they had always kept locked. Its only access a rickety pull-down ladder in the hallway. A shiver that had nothing to do with the cold snaked down his spine. He hadn't been up there in years, not since Elara had stored some old family heirlooms there. He held his breath, straining his ears. The scratching stopped, replaced by a soft thud, like something heavy had fallen. His heart began to pound against his ribs, a frantic drumbeat in the oppressive silence. Fear, cold and sharp, pierced through the numbness that had been his constant companion. He rose slowly, his legs feeling heavy and unresponsive. He picked up the rusty poker from beside the fireplace, its cold metal, a small comfort in his trembling hand. The candlelight flickered violently as he stepped into the hallway, the shadows stretching and contorting around him like grasping claws. The pull-down ladder to the attic hung slightly ajar, a sliver of darkness beckoning from above. He hadn't left it like that. He was certain. A knot of dread tightened in his stomach. Someone, or something, had been in the attic. Taking a deep, shuddering breath, Aarav reached for the ladder, his knuckles white against the cold metal. Each creak of the descending steps echoed in the suffocating silence, amplifying his fear. The air grew heavy, thick with a musty, unfamiliar scent. He pushed open the attic hatch, the hinges groaning in protest. The small space was shrouded in darkness, the single, grimy window offering no respite from the gloom. Dust motes danced in the faint beams of moonlight that pierced through cracks in the boarded-up window. And then he saw it. In the center of the attic floor, illuminated by a sliver of moonlight, was a circle of salt. Within the circle lay several objects, a tarnished silver mirror, some dried herbs tied with black thread, and a small wooden doll with button eyes that seemed to stare directly at him. An icy dread washed over him. This wasn't just someone rummaging around. This was something else. With trembling hands, he lifted the heavy lid. Inside, nestled amongst old clothes and forgotten trinkets, was a small, leather-bound journal. It was Elara's. He hadn't known she kept one. His heart pounded as he reached for it, his fingers brushing against something else beneath the journal. It was a photograph. He pulled it out, his breath catching in his throat. It was a picture of Elara, but not the Elara he remembered. Her eyes, usually so full of warmth and laughter, were wide with terror. Her face was pale and gaunt, and her lips were slightly parted in a silent scream. Behind her, barely visible in the shadows, was a tall, gaunt figure with long, skeletal fingers reaching out towards her. A gasp escaped his lips. This photograph, it couldn't be real. It looked ancient, yet he had never seen it before. A wave of dizziness washed over him, and the musty scent in the attic seemed to intensify, carrying with it a faint, metallic odor. Suddenly, the temperature in the attic plummeted. The air grew heavy, pressing down on him. He could hear a faint whispering sound, just at the edge of his hearing, a sibilant murmur that seemed to slither through the shadows. He clutched the photograph to his chest, his eyes darting around the darkness. He wasn't alone. He could feel it. A cold, malevolent presence was in the attic. A floorboard creaked behind him. He whirled around, the poker raised, his heart hammering against his ribs. But there was nothing there, just shadows stretching and swaying in the faint moonlight. The whispering grew louder, closer. He could almost make out words now, distorted and guttural, like a language he had never heard before. He backed away slowly, his eyes scanning every corner of the attic. Then he saw it, a faint shimmer in the far corner, near the boarded-up window. It was like heat rising from asphalt on a summer day, but this was cold, intensely cold. The shimmer grew, coalescing into a vaguely human shape. Terror, raw and primal, gripped Aarav. This wasn't a ghost. This was something far more sinister, something ancient and malevolent. The figure began to take form, its features still indistinct, but the palpable aura of dread emanating from it was suffocating. He wanted to scream, but his throat was constricted with fear. He wanted to run, but his legs felt like lead. He was trapped, cornered in the darkness with something that felt like a nightmare made flesh. The figure took a step towards him, and a wave of icy cold washed over him. He could feel his breath freezing in his lungs, the whispering intensified, swirling around him like a vortex of pure malice. He closed his eyes, bracing himself for the inevitable. This was it. This was how it ended, alone, in the darkness, claimed by whatever unholy entity had taken Elara. Suddenly, a blinding white light erupted from the photograph clutched in his hand. It was so intense that it pierced through his closed eyelids, banishing the darkness. The whispering stopped abruptly. The oppressive cold vanished. He cautiously opened his eyes. The shadowy figure was gone. The attic was filled with a soft, warm light emanating from the photograph. He looked down at it, his heart pounding with a mixture of confusion and a flicker of something he hadn't felt in years. Hope. The photograph now showed Elara as he remembered her. Her eyes full of life and laughter, her smile radiant. The gaunt figure behind her had vanished. As he stared at the photograph, a wave of warmth washed over him, a feeling of peace he hadn't experienced since Elara was by his side. He felt a gentle touch on his cheek, as light as a butterfly's wing. He looked up, his eyes widening in disbelief. Standing before him, bathed in the soft glow of the photograph, was Elara. She was as beautiful as he remembered, her eyes shining with love and a hint of sadness. "Aarav," she whispered, her voice like the gentle rustling of leaves. Tears streamed down his face as he reached out to her, his hand passing right through her. She was still a spirit, but different, lighter, free. What happened?" he choked out, his voice thick with emotion. Elara smiled sadly. A dark entity had latched onto a family heirloom, something that was in the attic. It craved life, and it took mine. The photograph, it held a piece of my soul, a memory of our love. When the darkness tried to consume you, the strength of our bond, it broke its hold. "But you're still—" "I'm free, Aarav. The entity is gone. My spirit can finally rest." Her eyes filled with tears. "You need to live now, my love. You need to paint again, to laugh again. Don't let my memory be a shadow. Let it be the light that guides you." She reached out, and this time, her hand felt real, warm against his cheek. A profound sense of peace settled over him, a closure he had thought impossible. As the first rays of dawn pierced through the cracks in the boarded-up window, Elara's form began to fade, the soft light emanating from the photograph dimming. "I will always love you, Aarav," she whispered, her voice growing fainter. And then, she was gone. Aarav sat in the attic, the photograph clutched tightly in his hand, the first tears of true peace he had shed in 5 years rolling down his cheeks. The darkness had lifted, not just from the attic, but from his soul as well. He knew Elara was truly gone, but not in the terrifying, unresolved way she had vanished before. She was free, and in her freedom she had set him free too. He looked around the dusty attic. No longer a place of fear, but a place where a miracle had occurred, a testament to the enduring power of love. He knew his journey of healing was just beginning, but for the first time in 5 long years, he felt a flicker of hope, a fragile spark of life rekindling within him. He stood up, the photograph still in his hand, and descended the creaking ladder, leaving the darkness behind. The cottage no longer felt like a tomb, but a place holding the echo of a love that had defied even death. He walked outside into the crisp morning air, the rising sun painting the sky in hues of gold and rose, mirroring the colors that were beginning to return to his own heart. He looked towards the whispering woods, no longer with fear, but with a sense of gratitude. He knew Elara would always be a part of him, her love a guiding star in his life. And as he looked towards the future, he knew, with a certainty that warmed him from the inside out, that he would live again. He would paint again. He would love again. Because that's what Elara would have wanted. The silver key felt cold and alien in Aarav's palm. It was intricately designed, with a small, almost imperceptible engraving of a crescent moon on its head. He ran his thumb over it, a shiver tracing its path down his spine. This wasn't something Elara would have owned. Their life together had been simple, their possessions few but cherished. This key exuded an air of antiquity, of secrets long buried. He searched his memory, desperately trying to recall if he had ever seen it before. Had Elara ever mentioned a locked box, a hidden room, anything that this key might open? His mind drew a blank. The cottage held no such mysteries, or so he had believed. The unsettling feeling intensified as he walked back into the cottage, the newfound peace already beginning to fray at the edges. He examined the key again, its coldness a stark contrast to the warmth he had felt moments ago in Elara's presence. It felt like a breadcrumb, a clue left behind in the wake of the terrifying revelation in the attic. But a clue to what? He started his search methodically, his eyes scanning every corner of the cottage, every piece of furniture, every nook and cranny. He checked the drawers, the shelves, even under the loose floorboards he knew about. Nothing. The key didn't seem to fit any lock within the familiar confines of their home. Days turned into a week, and the mystery of the key consumed him. He neglected his half-finished canvases, the vibrant colors he had tentatively started to mix now drying into dull, lifeless hues. The image of Elara, finally at peace, was slowly being overshadowed by this new, nagging question. He ventured into the village, something he hadn't done in years, the whispers of the locals following him like shadows. He showed the key to the oldest residents, their faces etched with the wisdom and weariness of time. None of them recognized it. It wasn't a key from any of the old houses in the village, nor did it match any lock they could recall. Just as despair began to creep back into his heart, he remembered something Elara had once mentioned, a fleeting comment about an old, abandoned well deep within the woods, a place the villagers avoided, claiming it was haunted. She had said her grandmother used to tell her stories about it, tales of forgotten treasures and tragic secrets. Aarav had dismissed it as folklore then, another one of Elara's whimsical fascinations. But now, the image of the crescent moon on the key flashed in his mind. The moon, often associated with ancient beliefs, with hidden places. Could there be a connection? Driven by a desperate hope, he ventured deep into the woods, the silver key clutched tightly in his hand. The path was overgrown and treacherous, the air thick with the scent of damp earth and decaying leaves. The whispering of the wind through the trees now sounded less comforting, more like hushed warnings. After what felt like hours, he found it, the abandoned well. It was hidden in a small clearing, almost swallowed by the surrounding foliage. The stone structure was crumbling, moss clinging to its weathered surface. The opening was dark and ominous, radiating a chilling dampness. He approached cautiously, the silence around the well unnerving. It felt like a place where secrets slept, undisturbed for centuries. He peered into the darkness, but could see nothing beyond the first few feet. The air emanating from within carried a faint, earthy smell, mingled with something else, something metallic. His heart pounded in his chest. Could this be it? Could this be what the key opened? He circled the well, examining the stone structure. On one side, almost hidden beneath a thick layer of ivy, he found it, a small, almost invisible keyhole, its metal tarnished with age. His hands trembled as he inserted the silver key. It slid in smoothly, clicking into place with a soft, almost inaudible sound. He held his breath and turned the key. A low grinding sound echoed from within the well. A section of the stone wall, cleverly disguised by the ivy, creaked open, revealing a narrow, dark passage leading downwards. A wave of apprehension washed over him. This felt wrong, dangerous, but the need to know, the desperate hope of finding another piece of the puzzle of Elara's disappearance, propelled him forward. He found a discarded lantern nearby, its glass cracked, but the wick still intact. With trembling hands he lit it, the flickering flame casting eerie shadows on the well's stone walls and the dark opening before him. Taking a deep breath, he stepped into the passage. The air inside was cold and damp, carrying a heavy, musty odor. The passage sloped downwards, the rough-hewn stone walls closing in around him. He walked slowly, the lantern light dancing ahead, illuminating strange symbols carved into the walls. They were unlike anything he had ever seen, a mix of geometric shapes and stylized figures that seemed to writhe in the flickering light. A sense of unease settled deep within him. This place felt ancient, and not in a comforting way. The passage opened into a small, circular chamber. In the center of the chamber was a stone pedestal, and upon it lay a wooden box, intricately carved with the same crescent moon symbol that was on the key. His heart leaped. This had to be it. This box held the answers. He rushed forward, his hands reaching for the box. But as he did, a cold gust of wind swept through the chamber, extinguishing his lantern and plunging him into absolute darkness. A blood-curdling shriek echoed through the chamber, a sound that seemed to claw at his very soul. It was Elara's voice, filled with unimaginable terror and pain. "Aarav! Get out! It's not over!" Panic seized him. The peace he had felt in the attic now seemed like a cruel illusion. The entity hadn't been banished. It had merely been dormant, and he had just awakened it. He fumbled in the darkness, trying to find his lantern, his breath coming in ragged gasps. The air grew heavy, the oppressive cold returning with a vengeance. He could feel a presence in the chamber with him, a malevolent energy that made the hairs on the back of his neck stand on end. Then he heard it, a soft dragging sound, like something heavy being pulled across the stone floor. It was getting closer. Terror lent him a surge of adrenaline. He scrambled backwards, his hands hitting something cold and metallic. It was a chain, attached to the wall. Following the chain, his fingers closed around something smooth and round. Another locket? He fumbled to open it. Inside, instead of a picture, there was a small, dried flower, a type he didn't recognize. As his fingers brushed against it, a jolt of energy surged through him, and a series of fragmented images flashed through his mind. Elara trapped in this chamber, her eyes wide with fear as the shadowy figure from the photograph loomed over her, chanting in a guttural language. He saw symbols being carved into the wooden box, the same symbols that were on the walls. He saw Elara fighting back, her love for him a fierce shield against the darkness. And then he saw the flower, this strange dried flower, glowing with a faint ethereal light. He saw Elara clutching it, whispering his name as the shadowy figure recoiled. Understanding dawned. This wasn't just a box. It was a prison. The entity hadn't taken Elara. It had trapped her, her life force slowly being drained to fuel its own dark existence. The photograph in the attic hadn't banished it. It had merely weakened its hold, a temporary reprieve fueled by the intensity of his grief and love. The dragging sound was closer now. He could feel the cold breath of the entity on his neck. He clutched the locket with the dried flower, a desperate idea forming in his mind. He remembered Elara's grandmother's stories about not just the scary parts, but also the legends of protective spirits, of ancient magic woven into the very fabric of the land. The flower, could it be a key, not to a lock, but to something more powerful? He closed his eyes, focusing all his love for Elara, all his grief and his desperate hope, into the locket. He pictured her face, her smile, the warmth of her hand in his. He whispered her name, pouring all his energy into the dried flower. A faint warmth emanated from the locket, growing stronger with each passing second. The dragging sound stopped. The cold presence seemed to falter, receding slightly. He opened his eyes. A faint, ethereal glow surrounded the locket, illuminating the chamber in a soft, pulsating light. The strange symbols on the walls seemed to flicker. their darkness receding. He held the locket out towards the darkness, where he sensed the entity lurking. "You took her from me," he cried, his voice filled with a newfound strength. "But her love is stronger than your darkness." A guttural roar echoed through the chamber, and a shadowy tendril lashed out at him. He flinched, but the tendril recoiled as it came into contact with the light emanating from the locket. The light intensified, and the dried flower in the locket began to glow with an almost blinding radiance. The symbols on the walls pulsed with a counter-energy, and the wooden box on the pedestal began to tremble. The chamber filled with a high-pitched shriek, a sound of pure agony. The shadowy presence writhed in the corner, shrinking and dissipating in the face of the growing light. Then, with a final, ear-splitting shriek, it was gone. The oppressive cold vanished, replaced by a sense of lightness, of liberation. The glow from the locket softened, and the dried flower within seemed to pulse gently. The wooden box on the pedestal lay still. Aarav felt a presence beside him, gentle and warm. He turned and saw Elara, no longer a faint spirit, but almost solid. Her eyes were filled with love and gratitude. "You did it, Aarav," she whispered, her voice clear and strong. "You broke its hold." "The flower, what is it?" he asked, his voice hoarse with emotion. "It's a moonpetal," she explained. "Rare and sacred. It blooms only under the light of a full moon in places touched by ancient magic. My grandmother gave it to me, a protection. I tried to use it, but it wasn't strong enough then. Your love, your unwavering belief, amplified its power." She reached out and took his hand, her touch warm and real. "I'm free, Aarav. Truly free." A wave of emotion washed over him, so intense it almost brought him to his knees. He had found her. He had saved her. Not in the way he had initially hoped, but in a way that felt even more profound. As the first rays of sunlight filtered down the passage from the well, Elara smiled. A radiant, joyful smile that he hadn't seen in 5 long years. "Come," she said, her hand still in his. "Let's leave this darkness behind." Together they walked out of the chamber, out of the passage, and back into the sunlight. The abandoned well no longer felt like a place of fear, but a place of liberation, a testament to the enduring power of love and the magic that lay hidden in the most unexpected places. As they stood in the clearing, hand in hand, the silver key now warm in Aarav's pocket, they knew that their journey had taken a terrifying detour, but it had ultimately led them back to each other in a way they could never have imagined. The miracle wasn't just Elara's release. It was the rekindling of their love, stronger and more resilient than ever before. A beacon of hope in the face of unimaginable darkness. A cold dread snaked around Aarav's heart at the sight of the old woman. Her sudden appearance felt like a sinister punctuation mark at the end of their hard-won peace. Elara's hand tightened in his, her earlier joy replaced by a flicker of apprehension in her eyes. "Who are you?" Aarav asked, his voice wary. The woman's presence exuded an unsettling aura, a blend of ancient wisdom and something undeniably malevolent. The old woman chuckled, a dry, rasping sound like leaves skittering across stone. "I am a keeper of secrets, child. Secrets that sleep beneath these ancient hills. Secrets that your meddling has disturbed." Her gaze remained fixed on Elara, an unnerving intensity in her eyes. "What do you mean?" Elara asked, her voice barely a whisper. The woman took a step closer, the wilting moonpetal in her hand seeming to pulse with a faint, sickly light. "That entity you banished, it was bound by a lineage, a pact made long ago. You have severed that tie, and now the balance is broken." Aarav felt a surge of protective anger. It was a malevolent force that trapped Elara. "We did what we had to do." The old woman's smile widened, revealing teeth that seemed a shade too long, too sharp. "Ah, but what is malevolent to you may be necessary to others. This entity, it fed on life, yes, but it also protected. It kept something far darker at bay." Elara gasped. What could be darker than what we faced? The woman's gaze flickered to Aarav, a hint of pity in her eyes. "You know nothing of the true shadows that lurk in this land, young man. Shadows that crave what was once given freely." She took another step, and Aarav instinctively moved to shield Elara. "Stay away from her." The woman ignored him, her attention solely on Elara. "The moonpetal, it is a key, child, a key to both binding and releasing. You used it to break the hold of one darkness, but in doing so, you have unlocked another. "What have we done?" Elara whispered, her face pale with fear. "You have opened the way for the Rakshasa's embrace," the old woman said, her voice dropping to a chilling whisper. "A hunger that slumbers beneath the oldest roots of these mountains. A hunger that was appeased by the entity you destroyed." Aarav felt a cold dread seep into his bones. The relief they had felt moments ago now seemed like a foolish dream. Their nightmare wasn't over. It was evolving. "What is the Rakshasa's embrace?" he asked, his voice trembling despite his efforts to sound strong. The old woman's eyes gleamed with an unsettling light. "It is a craving, young man. A craving for life, for essence. The essence of those who are deeply connected, whose souls resonate with a rare and potent energy, like yours." Her gaze shifted pointedly between Aarav and Elara. Elara stepped closer to Aarav, her hand finding his and squeezing it tightly. "How do we stop it?" The old woman sighed, a sound that held no warmth or comfort. "The binding ritual is broken. The entity that held it at bay is gone. The only way is to offer a new tether." Aarav's blood ran cold. He understood her implication immediately. "No, we won't sacrifice anyone." The woman tilted her head, her gaze sharp. "Sacrifice, or a willing offering to restore the balance? The Rakshasa awakens, child, and when it does, it will not be gentle in its taking." She held out the wilting moonpetal towards Elara. "This flower, it holds a resonance, a connection to the old magic. It can be used to guide the Rakshasa to offer the new anchor." Elara recoiled. "Anchor to what?" "To a willing soul, deeply entwined with another," the woman said, her eyes never leaving Elara's. "A soul that understands the weight of balance, the necessity of appeasement." A horrifying realization dawned on Aarav. The woman wasn't talking about sacrificing someone else. She was talking about one of them. "No," he repeated, his voice firm despite the tremor in his hands. "There has to be another way." The old woman shrugged, a gesture that spoke of ancient inevitability. "Perhaps, but time is not on your side. The stirring has begun. You can feel it, can't you?" A subtle tremor ran through the ground beneath their feet. A low, almost imperceptible vibration that sent shivers up Aarav's spine. The air grew heavy, charged with an unseen energy. The whispering wind through the trees now sounded like a hungry sigh. "What do we do?" Elara whispered, her eyes wide with terror. "There is an ancient shrine high in the mountains," the old woman said, her voice losing some of its earlier malice, replaced by a tone of grim practicality. "A place where the old pact was forged. Perhaps there you can find a way to re-establish the balance without a permanent offering." "Will you help us?" Aarav asked, his suspicion still high. The woman's lips curved into a cryptic smile. "I am a keeper of secrets, child. And this is a secret that must not consume the land. I will guide you, but the path will be treacherous, and the choices you face, they will test the very fabric of your love." She turned and started walking deeper into the woods, her frail form surprisingly agile. Aarav and Elara exchanged a look of desperate resolve and followed her, the fragile peace they had found shattered, replaced by a new, terrifying urgency. The journey to the mountain shrine was arduous. The old woman, who introduced herself as Maya, moved with an uncanny swiftness, leading them through dense forests and treacherous mountain paths. She spoke little, but when she did, her words were cryptic warnings and fragments of forgotten lore. Aarav and Elara clung to each other, their fear a tangible presence between them. The subtle tremors in the ground grew stronger as they ascended, the air growing colder and thinner. They could both feel an oppressive presence building in the mountains, a sense of ancient hunger awakening. Maya led them to a hidden cave, its entrance concealed behind a waterfall. Inside, the air was thick with the scent of incense and something else, something metallic, like dried blood. Strange symbols, similar to those in the well chamber, adorned the cave walls, glowing faintly in the dim light filtering through cracks in the ceiling. In the center of the cave was a stone altar, stained with dark, ancient markings. Maya instructed them to place the moonpetal on the altar. As Elara did so, the symbols on the walls flared with an eerie light, and the air in the cave crackled with energy. "This is the place," Maya said, her voice echoing in the confined space. "The nexus of the old magic. Here the veil between worlds is thin." She then produced a small, intricately carved wooden bowl and a pouch filled with dried herbs. She began to chant in a low, guttural language, her voice resonating with an unsettling power. She mixed the herbs in the bowl, the scent acrid and strange. "The Rakshasa is stirring," she said, her eyes closed in concentration. "Its hunger grows. We must act quickly." She instructed Aarav and Elara to stand before the altar, holding hands. "Your bond, it is strong. It is what drew the entity to Elara in the first place. Now it must be your strength." She sprinkled the herbal mixture around them, the scent intensifying. "You must focus your love, your connection. Visualize it as a radiant light, a shield against the encroaching darkness." Aarav and Elara closed their eyes, focusing on each other, on the memories of their love, their laughter, their shared dreams. They pictured a brilliant light emanating from their entwined hands, a warm and protective aura surrounding them. The chanting of Maya grew louder, the symbols on the walls pulsed faster, and the air in the cave vibrated with power. Outside, a fierce wind howled through the mountains, and the ground trembled violently. Suddenly, a shadowy form began to coalesce in the darkness at the back of the cave. It was tall and gaunt, its limbs elongated and skeletal, its eyes glowing with a malevolent red light. The Rakshasa. A wave of icy dread washed over Aarav and Elara, but they held their ground, their grip tightening, their focus unwavering. The light they visualized grew stronger, fueled by their fear and their love. The Rakshasa lunged, its shadowy claws reaching for them, but as it crossed the circle of glowing symbols around the altar, it recoiled with a screech of pain, its form flickering. Maya's chanting reached a fever pitch. She pointed towards the wooden box that Aarav had seen in the well chamber, which she had brought with them. The vessel. It must be resealed. Aarav understood. The box wasn't just a prison. It was a seal, and it had been broken. He and Elara moved towards the altar, their hands still entwined, the light emanating from them pushing back the encroaching shadows. The Rakshasa hissed and writhed, its red eyes burning with fury. As they reached the altar, Maya handed Aarav a small obsidian shard. "This, it is a fragment of the original binding. Use it to reseal the vessel." With trembling hands, Aarav took the shard. He looked at Elara, her eyes filled with love and trust. Together, they placed the shard on the wooden box. As the obsidian touched the wood, a blinding flash of light erupted from the box. The Rakshasa shrieked again, its form dissolving into wisps of shadow that were sucked back towards the box. The symbols on the walls dimmed, and the tremors in the ground subsided. The oppressive presence in the mountains lifted, replaced by a fragile silence. The howling wind outside died down to a gentle breeze. Aarav and Elara stood hand in hand, breathing heavily, the lingering scent of ozone filling the air. Maya's chanting ceased, and she leaned heavily on her staff, her face pale but her eyes holding a glimmer of relief. "It is done," she said, her voice hoarse. "The Rakshasa sleeps again. For now." "For now?" Aarav asked, the unease returning. Maya nodded grimly. "The balance has been restored, but the stirring has awakened something. A memory. The blood pact that bound the Rakshasa to the entity you destroyed, it was made for a reason. A protection against something even older, even more powerful." She looked at Elara, her gaze filled with a deep sorrow. "The entity was drawn to your unique life force, child. A life force that resonates with the ancient magic of this land. The Rakshasa was appeased by it. Now that the entity is gone, the true hunger may turn directly to you." Elara's face paled. "What can we do?" Maya sighed. "The shrine holds ancient wards, but they will not last forever against a focused intent. You must leave this place, both of you. Go far away, to where the old magic does not hold such sway. Sever your connection to these lands." Aarav looked at the mountains that had been his home, the woods where he had found and lost Elara. The thought of leaving felt like tearing a part of his soul away. But the fear in Elara's eyes was undeniable. "We'll go," he said, his voice firm. Maya nodded. "Go quickly, and never return. The shadows here, they are patient. They remember." As Aarav and Elara turned to leave the cave, hand in hand, Maya's voice stopped them. "The moonpetal. It is a part of you now, Elara. A mark, a resonance. It may draw unwanted attention, even far away. Be wary." Aarav looked back at the old woman, a chilling realization dawning. Their miracle had come at a cost. They were safe, for now. but they were also marked. The Rakshasa might be sleeping, but something else, something even older and more powerful, might now be aware of Elara. Their escape was not an ending, but the beginning of a new, unknown terror. The true horror, he knew, had just begun to follow them out of the whispering woods. A paralyzing fear gripped Aarav and Elara as they stared at the figure at the edge of the woods. The wilting, red-tinged moonpetal in its skeletal hand was a chilling message, a confirmation that their efforts in the mountain shrine had not been enough. The darkness they had faced was not so easily banished. "What is that?" Elara whispered, her voice trembling, her hand clutching Aarav's with desperate strength. Aarav's mind raced, trying to reconcile this new horror with what Maya had told them. The Rakshasa was supposed to be sleeping. Was this a different entity entirely, drawn by the disruption? The red glow of the moonpetal in its hand sent a fresh wave of dread through him. It was a mockery of the life-giving flower, twisted into something sinister. I don't know," he stammered, his eyes fixed on the unmoving figure. "But it feels wrong." The figure began to move, its gait slow and deliberate, yet somehow unnervingly swift. It glided across the uneven terrain, as if unbound by gravity, its form shifting and distorting in the fading light. The air around it seemed to ripple, growing colder with each step it took. "We have to run," Aarav said, pulling Elara after him towards the village path. Their legs felt heavy and unresponsive, their breath catching in their throats. The image of the gaunt figure, its red eyes burning like embers in the twilight, was seared into their minds. They stumbled down the path, the familiar surroundings now feeling menacing and alien. The shadows of the trees stretched long and distorted, seeming to reach out like grasping claws. The sounds of the forest, once a comforting symphony, now sounded like hushed whispers, following their desperate flight. Behind them, they could hear no footsteps, no rustling of leaves. Yet the chilling presence of the figure grew stronger, closer. It was as if it were gliding effortlessly, its pursuit relentless and silent. Reaching the edge of the village, they burst into the narrow, winding streets, hoping to find safety in numbers. But the villagers, already wary of Aarav's return, stared at them with a mixture of fear and suspicion. Their frantic expressions and hurried pace only seemed to amplify the unease that had settled over the community since Elara's disappearance. "Help us!" Aarav cried out, but his voice was lost in the growing darkness and the villagers' fearful murmurs. They seemed reluctant to get involved, their eyes darting nervously towards the edge of the woods, as if they too sensed the approaching darkness. Suddenly, the gaunt figure emerged from the tree line, its presence casting a palpable wave of fear over the village. The villagers gasped and recoiled, their faces pale with terror. Some slammed their doors shut, while others simply stood frozen in place, their eyes wide with a primal dread. Aarav knew they couldn't stay here. The village offered no sanctuary from whatever was hunting them. He pulled Elara through the deserted streets, their only hope to find a way out, away from this cursed place. They reached the old temple at the edge of the village, its ancient stone walls offering a semblance of protection. The heavy wooden doors were ajar, and they slipped inside, hoping to find a moment's respite. The temple was dimly lit by flickering oil lamps, casting long, dancing shadows on the intricate carvings that adorned the walls. The air was thick, with the scent of incense and decay. It felt ancient, a place where time itself seemed to hold its breath. "What was that thing?" Elara whispered, her voice trembling as she leaned against a cold stone pillar. Aarav shook his head, his mind still reeling from the terrifying pursuit. "I don't know. It wasn't the Rakshasa. It felt older, more malevolent." As if in response to his words, the temperature in the temple plummeted. The flickering lamps sputtered, casting the chamber into near darkness. A low, guttural growl echoed from the shadows, closer than it should have been. They whirled around, their hearts pounding in their chests. The gaunt figure stood at the entrance of the temple, its red eyes burning in the gloom. It held the red-tinged moonpetal aloft, and a wave of icy energy washed over them. "It followed us," Elara whispered, her voice filled with despair. The figure glided silently towards them, its skeletal fingers twitching. It emanated an aura of cold hunger, a desperate craving that felt even more potent than the Rakshasa's slumbering presence. Suddenly, Elara gasped and clutched at her chest. The moonpetal she wore, the one from the locket, began to glow with a faint, erratic light. She cried out in pain as a strange energy coursed through her body. "It's connected to you," Elara realized, his blood running cold. "The red moonpetal, it's a twisted reflection of yours." The gaunt figure seemed to sense this connection. It reached out a long, skeletal hand towards Elara, its red eyes fixated on her. Just as it was about to touch her, a voice echoed through the temple, ancient and resonant. "You shall not take what is bound by love." The gaunt figure recoiled with a hiss, its red eyes flickering with surprise and anger. From the shadows at the far end of the temple, Maya emerged, her frail form radiating an unexpected power. She held her staff aloft, and the ancient carvings on the temple walls began to glow with a soft, ethereal light. "This place is protected by wards older than your hunger," Maya said, her voice surprisingly strong. "Leave now, creature of shadow, or face the consequences." The gaunt figure hesitated, its red eyes darting between Maya and Elara. It seemed to sense the power emanating from the ancient temple. With a frustrated snarl, it turned and glided back into the darkness, disappearing as silently as it had come. A wave of relief washed over Aarav and Elara, but it was quickly replaced by a chilling realization. Whatever that creature was, it wasn't deterred. It would be back. "What was that thing?" Aarav asked Maya, his voice trembling. Maya's face was grim. "That was a Pishacha, an ancient entity, a devourer of life essence. It is drawn to strong life forces, especially those that resonate with the old magic. The Rakshasa kept it at bay, its own hunger a shield against the Pishacha's greater craving. And now that the Rakshasa is weakened," Elara whispered, her eyes filled with fear. Maya nodded gravely. "Now you are the most vulnerable. The Pishacha can sense the moonpetal's resonance within you. It will hunt you, relentlessly." "But why the red moonpetal?" Aarav asked. "It is a corrupted bloom," Maya explained, "a sign of a life force twisted by darkness, a beacon for the Pishacha's hunger. It likely belonged to someone the entity you destroyed had consumed, their essence perverted. So we can't stay here either," Elara said, her voice filled with despair. "No," Maya agreed. "The temple wards are strong, but they will not hold against a determined Pishacha forever. You must leave, and you must find a way to sever the connection between Elara and the moonpetal's resonance." "How?" Aarav asked desperately. Maya looked at them, her eyes filled with a mixture of concern and grim determination. "There is one place, high in the forbidden peaks, where the veil between worlds is thinnest, an ancient spring, said to cleanse and purify. It is a perilous journey, fraught with dangers, but it may be your only hope. Will you come with us?" Elara asked, her voice pleading. Maya shook her head. "My place is here, Sasan Siden, guarding these ancient secrets. But I will guide you as far as I can. The path ahead will test your courage and your love like never before. The Pishacha will be relentless, and the mountains themselves hold their own dangers." As they prepared to leave the relative safety of the temple, the weight of their situation pressed down on them. They had escaped one horror, only to be pursued by something even more ancient and terrifying. Their miracle in the well chamber now felt like a brief reprieve, and a nightmare that was far from over. The hunt had truly begun, and the forbidden peaks awaited, shrouded in mystery and peril. The red-tinged moonpetal, a sinister beacon, marked Elara as the prey, and Aarav knew he would do anything to protect her, even if it meant facing unimaginable horrors in the desolate heights.